Welcome to the Athena 40 podcast, Conversations with Women from the MENA region. This series is in partnership with NOMA Women Advancement Establishment, a United Arab Emirates-based organization founded on the vision of an equitable world for women. In this series, we are hosting exceptional women from the Middle East and North Africa. They are thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and policymakers. And I am your host, Elizabeth Filippouli, founder of Athena 40, an international platform connecting women leaders. Helena, really a pleasure to welcome you to our podcast series.
Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us about yourself and your journey. Take us back to your childhood. What was it that launched the creation of Elina Nizar?
Well, I originally from Iraq. Both parents are from there. Came to London, immigrated to London, where I basically grew up my entire life, or most of it. During my teenage years, my father then had to relocate to the Middle East again, and that was due to his job. So we spent 3 years in the Middle East. I was 11, 12, and 13. And then my mom thought, okay, the kids have to come back to London now and continue their studies. I had a fantastic time in the Middle East as well. I met incredible people in my school, and today I'm still in touch with some of them. Came to London, continued my studies. I attended college here and then university. I have to say, growing up and studying in university, I wasn't entirely sure what career I did want to pursue. I developed an interest in all sorts of random sectors, including being a flight attendant, to journalism potentially. And then I always had a desire and an interest in psychology and philosophy. And I think now if you were to see my bookshelf at home, it's all or mainly psychological or philosophical. But while I was commuting into university, which was at Goldsmiths in New Cross, I took the tube every morning, and that was my commute. And during my commute, I would observe these individuals who were reading the City AM, who were in their suits and working away. I think at that point, I did sort of realize that this is a journey or a path that I would like to pursue for myself. I wasn't entirely sure what they did or which sector they were in. I knew it was financial markets related, but I specifically would observe the women in their outfits, in their business attire. And I always it was just an inspiration for me. And I began then, once I finished my degree, I began applying for very junior roles in the city. And that's where it all began. And that's exactly 10 years ago today. I started in London Wall Street and just progressed and moved on from there. Developed different roles or attended sort of into different roles. And yeah, that's where I am today.
Quite an interesting deviation.
It was.
In the sense that, someone who's very keen on psychology and philosophy, which are about the mind's explorations and journeys, decides to shift to something so technocratic, so practical as figures and finances. What was it that triggered that click? Of course, you mentioned the inspiration, and the women in their suits and reading the CDAM, but was there also something else? So a different world, which perhaps would be a challenge for you, and you were very much up to this challenge.
So growing up, my mum was always independent. She was always a worker. And even when she came to London, she encountered several different challenges. My father was always abroad and working. And of course, he'd seek to his family here in the UK. But, she definitely enjoyed a lot of solo challenges. She always overcame it. And she's actually a teacher by practice. And my father is a political writer or a political journalist. And they never had an influence on or pressured me into my studies or my career. They always left me be. which was also part of, I guess, why I was a little bit confused. I definitely knew I didn't want to be a teacher. I definitely knew that I didn't want to be a journalist. But it did leave me a little bit out of my element. So where do I go from here? I always knew that I wanted to earn my own money. I always knew that I wanted to develop my own path and not rely on anyone. So even from very earlier on, while I was still studying, I did want to work and have my own paycheck. And I never really needed to, but I always wanted to. So I would even label, so my first paycheck bought me my first laptop. When I got into the city, my first client is what led me to buy my first bag, for example. And I still remember the memories or the paycheck that was mine. And this is what I bought with it. And so for me, when I saw these women in my commute, it defined success for me. It defined independence for me. It defined an aura of power. And that for me in first sight was incredibly inspiring. And then when I entered the industry and when I started off at a junior level, I noticed that it was, of course, male dominated. And but the women that were successful in the industry were just absolute leaders and inspiring for me to see. And I knew there and then that this is something that I did want to pursue, I would say. It's something that I wanted to pursue. I also have to say that when I did start, I think in the first year, and I wanted to develop into a new market. So the first market that was assigned to me was the Middle East, naturally, because I'm from there and I speak Arabic. And then I thought I want to diversify to more challenging regions. And Germany at the time was an up and coming, I mean, it still is, a market where there were a lot of businesses, there was a lot of deals coming in, a lot of M&A transactions coming in from Germany. And so I decided that I took it upon myself that I thought, oh, Germany would be a very interesting market for me to start. And one of the directors who I worked with indirectly said to me, Elina, you're not ready for Germany. They will eat you alive. He said that to me. Now, at the time, I thought, but today I will thank him for it because I didn't listen to him. And that evening, I normally left the office around 7 p.m. That evening, I think I left the office at 10:30 or 11 p.m. And I just did so much research on the German market. I picked up so many leads on the German market. And for year 1.5, I build the most revenue out of the German market. I was then in and out of Germany for 2 years. I took up German studies and I just built a huge market, a client base in Germany who are today my friends. And that was 8 years ago. And these are people that I still speak to. These are people that email me constantly in German or just to make sure that I maintain my German language. So in a way, I guess this is something that women go through on a day-to-day basis, whether it's verbally communicated to them or not. But for me, I took it on as a challenge. And like I said, today I probably should thank him for that comment that he did make, because I truly believe that the success of the German market is what just had a huge element to the success of my career today.
So you're about to launch your career. Mm-hmm. Someone who's a friend, a colleague, he's giving you a warning that you're going to be eaten alive.
They were his words.
So market and the people. And what did you discover as, the meaning behind that phrase? I mean, I know and I understand that you not only no one ate you alive, but they benefited from who you are, your knowledge, your expertise, your determination, and you created a market yourself. But what did he mean? What did you discover on the way? And what were the challenges that hit you, which you had to overcome?
I think he implied, could have been, I'm a woman. I don't speak the German language. I think it was also less so of the fact that I don't speak the German language, because not many people, certainly in business, not everybody speaks the language in order to conduct business. But I think he almost associated the fact that I was maybe too kind or too nice, and I would be maybe a little bit naive. I was still young because it was very earlier on in my career, and I couldn't handle the challenge or a new challenge, and that I should maybe stick to my comfort zone, which was the Middle East market, because that's where I'm from and this is the language that I speak. So this is where I belong. So I was automatically categorized and I was put in a bucket. And I have to say that the person who said this to me was not a white Caucasian English person. So I would like to emphasize on that, because that has never been, the person wasn't even European, a white Caucasian European. So again, I would just like to emphasize on this fact.
A man or a woman?
It was a man.
A man.
It was a man. It was a man of an ethnic minority himself, who said this to me. He was a senior. He was very senior in the organization. But yeah.
Did you meet with him again a couple of years down the line when, you had beaten the odds and you had proven him wrong?
Well, I was still in the organization that I worked in while he was there, when I was building my success out of the German market. And he could see it. I didn't have to tell him. He could see it, and he always couldn't believe it, but he definitely could see it. And I then began talking or discussing my development with the other director and not him. So I didn't have to say it. The numbers were there to be seen. I was clearly and also enjoying my time, which, I just decided to ignore him and just let him observe.
Absolutely. Actions speak louder than words.
Exactly.
Was there anyone who supported you throughout that time as a mentor or as a sponsor within the organization, or perhaps, outside the company? Was there anyone who was there as a sounding board or a guiding light?
During the first company in the city, I had a friend who was not in my team. He was in a separate team, but I think I was the first one in the office and the last one to leave. And he saw me that I was clearly out of my comfort zone when I had first started. And, he was doing incredibly well. But I remember he took a lot of his time to support me and almost like believe in me and encourage me. And so he was always around at that period of time. And we became very good friends, and I would discuss with him my challenges. And again, he'd help me overcome these challenges. When I left the company and I then moved on to progressing my own personal career within my company, or even before then slightly, so just to take a step back, I never really had a specific mentor that I could look to speak to for advice, for guidance. But I was always fortunate enough to be surrounded by a lot of also in my career strong women who I looked up to as mentors. And that's also from the starting point of again, like I said, my mother, who worked her entire life and also did endure several challenges when she migrated here to the UK and when she went between the Middle East and London because of my father's job, and we were kids, myself and my brother. But also earlier on in my career, I think the company which then led me to set up Cap Connect, my business today, I was very fortunate enough to work with another incredible woman who I considered and still do consider my role model. And she's somebody that I look up to, that I inspire to be. And today she's my business partner at Cap Connect. So, but again, I was very lucky enough that she came into my life at that moment in my life, which played a crucial role. And she was incredibly successful. Her voice meant something and people listened to her. And so for me to see her and to grow and to learn from her, and I still learn from her every day. And, if I need advice, I turn to her. And, I look at her dedication to the company and how much time and dedication and effort she puts into it, and how it can grow. And I've been very fortunate to be around these women, and especially in our sector, even yourself, Elizabeth. I mean, just to see how far you've gone with building Athena and all these remarkable people that you're around. Again, I'm very fortunate to be around these women in our sector.
I think that it is very important for us women to create opportunities for networking. And this is why we created Athena and the Global Thinkers Forum. It is a combination of finding support through mentoring, through knowledge transfer, but also through access to networks. They say, these days that your network is your net worth. Mm-hmm. Do you agree with this notion?
Yes and no. And just to maybe elaborate on that, I don't necessarily agree that your network is your net worth, but I think your net worth is the relationships that you have with your network. So we all know that there are people who have over 1,000 contacts on LinkedIn, over 500 contacts on their phone book, which ultimately don't mean much unless you have a relationship with this network. Somebody once told me, actually, he's a very good client of mine. He said to me, Elina, it's not about who you know, but it's also about who knows you, and who you can pick up the phone to and discuss an idea, or to discuss a deal or initiative. And that, of course, always stems from your network. But again, your network is not worth anything if you don't have the relationship there as well.
I think that this is one of the most important points to raise, because these days with social networks and LinkedIn and Facebook and Insta, we tend to think, or people tend to think, that the more followers they have, the more connections they have, the bigger the network, this is going to translate into leads or partnerships or something that is valuable, which is not the case. It is very important to understand the value of trusted relationships, of meaningful connections, of building something that will bring value to both sides, and not just for the sake of increasing the number of names that one has under, their LinkedIn profile. You mentioned before, Elina, about timing, and how when you met your friend, mentor, who became your business partner, timing was absolutely excellent in your life. How would you prioritize between timing, talent, and hard work? Which one comes first?
Talent, hard work, and timing. That's how I would prioritize it. For me, and setting up Cap Connect and the people that are within the company today, we don't clock in at a certain hour. We don't clock out at a certain hour. We don't have the expectation of people working Monday to Sunday, AM all the way through to PM. I've always been a firm believer in work smart and don't work too hard. So a talent in being able to do that, the same amount of work or the productivity to reach the goal in a talented way, it's for me much more of a priority than somebody who is. How do you define hardworking as well? Is it somebody who wants to work from 6:30 all the way through to 9 p.m.? Of course, that's hardworking, but that's not less hardworking than somebody who works smarter in a much more compressed amount of time, or works differently rather, in a much shorter amount of time, but ultimately has a lot more to do because he or she has reached that, but just in a quicker pace. So that's how I would prioritize it.
That's interesting, because you're also touching on time management skills. Mm-hmm. And this is something which we learn on the way, we can develop. It's, something that it's a skill that can be acquired. How important is that skill, especially, in this day and age? You mentioned Monday to Sunday. In reality, in practice, we do work 7 days a week. Because this is a very demanding world. be because we are entrepreneurs or we have decided to launch our own ventures and projects. So that means more dedication, more presence. So how did you learn your time management?
I mean, at first it was a bit of a struggle for me. And for me, it was more the working from home part that was a struggle because I found it to be very distracting. But the time management, I mean, I still don't manage my time very well if one was to see the hours that I work. But I choose to. I choose to, when I go on holiday, I choose to not switch off my phone. I choose to go through my emails and respond to my emails. But this is a decision that I've made, and that's because I love what I do. I also love the people that I work with. A lot of my clients I consider my friends. If I'm out with a client for dinner, I can call this client a friend of mine. So it's a joy. It's not, I don't ever feel like this is work and I need to do this. I enjoy it, and I think the clients know or can see that I enjoy it, and that's why we have developed such a long-standing business relationship. So again, the way that I did it was that for me, I always pursue something that I enjoy. And the minute I don't enjoy it, or the minute I feel like it's got a negative impact on me, and this is professionally, personally, socially, in any way, the minute I feel like this is no longer something that's either inspiring me, challenging me positively, or having a good influence on me, or something that I'm enjoying, I try to step away from it or park it to the side and rather focus my energy on something that I like and I enjoy. And my business, my venture, it's an entrepreneurial route that I decided to take upon myself. Of course, I knew that it wasn't going to be easy, but I also know that in order to reach my goal, I continue to work and I'm just enjoying the process.
We have been, over the past few months, going through very tricky times, very challenging.
To say the least.
Right? I mean, out of the blue, who would ever have imagined back in February 2020 that, this was coming our way? Which is, of course, extremely concerning. It is an alert for humanity to get our act together as human beings, as citizens of this world, and become more accountable. And it also, of course, generates new opportunities for business, for partnerships, for projects of social impact. How have you been experiencing this period?
Well, I mean, it was a little bit new, to say the least.
Just a little bit new.
Just a little bit new. I mean, as you said, in February, I celebrated my birthday in February, and I was out with some friends and some clients, and, we were celebrating, we were having a really good time. And I then caught up with one of my friends. I was in Dubai where a lot of the first wave had happened. And I caught up with one of my friends in London, and I said to him, I can't believe the last time I saw you. Of course, this is around June time. I said, I can't believe the last time I saw you and we were all having a good time was in February. And 50% of the people are no longer in London at the moment. They're all, in their home in Italy or in Holland. And, he said, yeah, and COVID was actually running around around February, and we had no idea. But for me, I embraced it. So working from home was never a challenge for me because I had the opportunity to develop that in 2016 when I set up Cap Connect. So I enjoyed the challenges of that, and so for me it was fine. That wasn't so much the issue. I was able to communicate or attend to meetings or phone calls via Zoom, which we all became familiar with during this time.
We have become Zombies, as they say.
We became Zombies, exactly. It's like, what's this magical app that we all need to now download? So, I mean, thank goodness for Zoom. But for me, I embraced it. And the outcome of that actually was positive for me because I had never spent as much time looking after myself. to the extent that I did during COVID. So I was also lucky that I was in Dubai at the time and I was working UK hours. So of course, when I was awake, London was still asleep. And I had a 3 to 4 hour buffer. So I would wake up, I would have an hour and a half exercise, I would read, I would see what's happening in the world, read the news. I would then have a wonderful breakfast that I'd make for myself, go for a walk. So I had plenty of time. And because I was at home as well, I had, my skin never looked any better. I didn't feel any better. I've never felt any better. I was reading all the books that I had on my list of books to read for months. And I was then able to observe what was happening. I predicted that we were not going to come back to normal anytime soon. And we had to immediately sort of brainstorm internally and think, okay, what can we do to be ahead of the game? We cannot hibernate for the entire time or allow Cap Connect to sleep until 2021, for instance. So what are the trends today? What's happening? How can we be in front of people? How can we still communicate with people? And so we began hosting speaker webinars very quickly, where we had different sort of industry specialists come along and talk about all things that were interesting and exotic and not necessarily related to financial markets. But and we covered several different topics. We had Goldman Sachs talking about what could happen economically, financially. We had the head of cyber risk from FTI talk about all the cyber risks that are now imposed with people working from home and all their sensitive information that could be hacked. Incidentally, just a couple of hours later, EasyJet's database was hacked and all the information was then released. We had somebody from Oxford University who was trialing the vaccines for COVID to talk about what the estimate time of the vaccine for it to be available. So, we wanted to be ahead of the curve and maintain contact with our clients. But of course, there is the Zoom fatigue as well. So we did become Zoombies, as you say, but then there was also a wave of Zoom fatigue. And when I came back to London, I did want to see my friends, my colleagues, my business peers, my clients, who again, I consider my friends. And they all shared the same sort of frustration in that, let's all go back to meeting, let's attend lunches, dinners, which is what we're all doing today. But I chose to, going back to your question, Elizabeth, I did choose to just embrace the situation. I never had a negative thought around it. Of course, I was speaking to some people who were very sort of depressed and down about the entire change. And for me, you either chose to get out of this situation having piled on so much weight, having binged watched all of Netflix and more, and not so much be productive. Whereas I took it on, I took up skiing during that time. I was reading. I decided to order some painting palettes and just to start painting. I had a beautiful view of DIFC and Burj Khalifa from where I was staying. I then moved to the marina, so I just wanted to paint. I went back to learning German. I downloaded my Duolingo app. So it was how to be as productive as I possibly can during this time. So it's just like anything in life. And this can come back, something similar can come back in 10 years' time, but it's just how you view it and how you can handle the situation, really. That was just my view on it.
Yes, I agree with you, and kind of, operated similarly during, and throughout that time. So I had this feeling that we have entered a path which is very frustrating and stressful and concerning from, one hand. On the other hand, it has been giving us tremendous opportunities for self-development, learning, become more creative, and what I mentioned before, see how we can become more engaged with other people, with our friendships, our relationships, how we can extend a hand of support, because all of us, especially, during these times of crisis, uncertainty, confusion, all of us need a warm hand, the supportive words, just the note that someone is there and caring for you and checking, how you're doing. So on a human level, which is also very much about, the soul soothing part of it all. I think it has been a unique opportunity to reconnect with the people who are important to us, and they bring value to our lives on a human level, and we can bring value to theirs. Having said that, I think that it is equally important to appreciate, the need that some people may have to perhaps not do anything, because all that is so overwhelming, is so confusing, that you just feel the need to take a step back from everything before you can reassess your life. Because this over and hyper productivity or over participation, Zoom meetings and webinars and webcasts and all that, they can be quite draining, brain draining. So I do hear when someone tells me, Elizabeth, for me, it was a period that I decided to be more quiet, stay away from, everything that is happening online, because I needed to reconnect with my inner self.
That's very important too. Exactly. Yeah, I completely agree. And I think, as I said, you just invest so much time in yourself during this period as well, because you're not rushing, you're not in the commute, you're not in the London grind of things. You have the time out to, of course, you can plan your work day by certain hours, but the rest of it, you learn to enjoy your own company. You learn to have that peace and quiet and do things that give you your inner peace or your inner balance. And I think that's very important. And I think that's also what a lot of people took from this. It's the inner balance of things. And of course you work and you also spend time with people socially, which always consumes energy, and it's positive energy that is consuming of you. But sometimes to just sit and in quiet, and whether it's meditate, whether it's to do yoga, or whether it's your morning run just alone or read, just anything that makes you happy and gives you your alone time, your inner peace time. I think that's vital. I think we had more time to do that during this turbulent year as well, or 6-7 months. And I think we've all now learned to adapt that into our day-to-day routine. I mean, I certainly have. So since I came back to London from Dubai, I set myself a routine of this early morning, whether it's a run or a meditation or some yoga. And I've adapted that since I've come back here. So I wake up and that's still my routine. It's my routine of not checking my phone. It's my routine of switching off, having that peace of quiet, having that time to myself. And the same in the evenings, again, to switch off and read my book, because that's what makes me happy and that's what makes me zone out or switch off. So I think that's something that we took on from this time, which I think is a positive. It's how to maintain yourself and to self-improve yourself, because your inner peace is just as important as all the external factors that we run around and we're so fixated on.
Also, because this way we boost our productivity. Sometimes when we take a few steps back and regroup, we top up on energy. And that is also very important. Talking about careers, talking about, energy and breaks. Nama, our partner for this series of podcasts, they issued a very insightful report a few months ago, and they talked to women and career women from the MENA region, and those women reported that their careers were extremely important to them, and that these careers that they're building, they're driven by a desire for respect, self-motivation, personal growth, and independence, something which you also mentioned in the beginning of our conversation today. How can we provide more enabling environments, especially in the MENA region, for women to access more knowledge, networks, resources? How can we, create more environments and ecosystems for women in the MENA to thrive professionally and as entrepreneurs?
What I would like to see happen more of, I guess, more specifically in the MENA region. So, for instance, for NAMA to organize these networking events, but amongst the corporate world. So to walk into the banks, the private banks, the corporate banks, the retail banks, the law firms, and to access or to create these networking opportunities that are for women, for young women, and preferably led by a speaker who sits in these corporate entities or these institutions, to give a speech and to allow these young women who are either studying or at the start of their careers and want to enter a career path in the institutional world to have live access to these women, to host more networking opportunities, again, for women, and make it personal, make it private, so that they feel comfortable enough to attend, to participate, have a members club, and for them to discuss their challenges, which could be both personal, it could be professional, but to be in a safe environment to do so. And to be amongst these women. I've been in and out of the region for a while, and I'm lucky that I'm spending a lot of time in Dubai as well. And I would say that that's something that's definitely missing. And I would love to participate in more, to organize more, and to be around these, even, some of the young women that I've met through Global Thinkers Forum, who I'm mentoring. That tends to be the challenge that they have in the region. So it's one thing to not have enough female role models that are there. I think it's a good way for them to build on their confidence. It's one of the barriers that they have is their own confidence. And maybe the fact that they don't have access to these women who they're able to talk to and look up to for guidance. So I think some more activity around that, where they can have some more face-to-face time. And again, it's always beneficial when it's in the building of an institution. And I'm sure, I know how much the UAE are trying to encourage women leaders and, women to come along and work for these institutions. So, I think that so many of these organizations would absolutely love an idea like this and would definitely welcome it.
They say that mentoring is a two-way journey. Yes, as a senior mentor, you convey your knowledge and expertise and wisdom and experience, but you learn yourself from your mentee, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody who's older than you or experienced in a certain way. There's so much you learn, and it is a two-way street. I mean, I'm learning so much also from my mentee, who is a lot younger than I was when I had any interest in this world. I mean, when I was some of these mentees' ages, when I was their age, I didn't even think about becoming this ambitious and to see that, I mean, just to participate and become or volunteer to be a mentee in one of these organizations is something that I never even thought to do at this age. So it's just wonderful to see the level of proactiveness and the level of interest and, wanting to learn or engaging in all sorts of different activities and it's incredible to see just how motivated, which indirectly gives me motivation because I think, I should be doing maybe some more of this or some more of that. So of course you learn different ethics, different morals, different principles, different interests or different things that are important to people that maybe I have looked past. And I think, okay, maybe I should take this. This is also important and I shouldn't just dismiss it on the side because I'm focused on that. So I absolutely agree. I think it's a two-way street. I think you learn just as much as you teach.
Is there any message that you would like to share with our listeners through this podcast?
I think that the main message would be to younger women who are developing, I've always believed, truly trust the timing of your life. And I know many women, including myself, have come across pressures in life, whether it's growing up at a younger age where we feel like we need to be perfect in so many different aspects. So whether it's personally, socially, with family, with friends, with work, with education, and we try to master everything all at the same time. I would say that it's okay to get it wrong. It's okay to not know what you want to do by a certain age, like myself. That's all okay. It's okay to get it wrong. It's okay to pick up and try to learn something new. And that's why I always say trust the timing of your life. And I know that some women feel pressured also they think that they need to be married by a certain age, have a family by a certain age. And if you've reached a certain age, then it's too late, which causes a lot of pressure on women that I see. And this is, again, it's across different ages. And that's why, again, I go back to just trust the process of your own life, trust the timing of your own life. Because just because your friend has reached a certain stage in her life, it doesn't mean you're behind because you haven't. You just have a different path, and just instead of focusing on that, focus on now, your today, your tomorrow, and what will make you happy right now, and just enjoy the process of it without thinking too much. That's definitely a message that it's something that if I could go back to my 17 or 18-year-old self, that's the message that I would convey as well. That's the message that I would send. And I'm lucky that I didn't allow these external voices or these external factors influence me, and I am incredibly happy.
This is brilliant. Elina Nizar, thank you so much for a great conversation.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you for listening to the Athena 40 podcast, Conversations with Women from the MENA region, brought to you in partnership with NAMA Women Advancement Establishment. If you want to get in touch with us, please email us on info@athena40.org. That is info@athena40.org. For NAMA's work, please visit www.namawomen.ae. Keep well, stay inspired and motivated.